Hey everybody, greetings from Forest County, Pennsylvania on a rather brisk Christmas day. Well, it's not as brisk as it was yesterday. It was about 10 below with a minus 40 wind chill. So anyhow, let me ask you, do you spend sleepless night after sleepless night pondering unanswered questions about Forest County iron production in the 1850s? Well, of course you do. Don't we all? So stick around. You have questions, I've got answers. This is Forest County Outback number 12, the Cross Furnace, part 1. Now the Cross Furnace, also known as the Forest Furnace, was a stone blast furnace located on Little Hickory Creek, and iron was produced there in the 1850s and 60s. So before we get into the video, some background is in order. When we think of iron making in western Pennsylvania, historically we immediately picture Pittsburgh and the surrounding area. And beginning in the 1860s, that really became the reality. That industry became concentrated in that area. Prior to that, with the state of the transportation system and the technology being used, it made more sense to produce the iron close to the source of the raw materials. So the industry was much more dispersed and largely a rural occupation. Now, making iron required iron ore, limestone, and large tracts of timber that could be converted into charcoal for fuel. So an ironworks at that time included mines, charcoal kilns, the furnace, and all the related activities that supported those operations. So an ironworks would employ miners, woodcutters, charcoal makers, teamsters, furnace men, stonemasons, carpenters, blacksmiths, harness makers, wheelwrights, wagon makers. There would be farm laborers, sawmill workers, and a large contingent of women doing domestic duties, housekeeping, cooking, laundry, things like that. Now, an ironworks was kind of based on the southern cotton plantation system, but without the slave labor, at least in the north. So it was a self-contained, self-sufficient community. So these people had to be housed. So there were cabins and boarding houses. There were workshops for the different artisans. There were stables, barns, storehouses, a farm, a gristmill, a sawmill, a store, and sometimes a church and a school. I kind of keep jumping around to try to take in some of this beautiful scenery here. So a brief history of this site. William Cross was a veteran iron master, and he acquired this property from the Commonwealth around 1850. The furnace was put into operation in 1853. There was a farm on top of Church Hill, which eventually reached about 200 acres. There was also a water-powered sawmill. Now, this site is 2 miles from the Allegheny River, so they constructed a wooden rail tramway. This was not a railroad. This was powered by gravity and horsepower, and they used that to move their mill and furnace products down to the river, where they had a boat yard. They were building flatboats to float their products downriver. In 1858, Cross sold the entire operation to Frederick Allison, who was his general manager, and David Hatch. Now, they erected a new steam-powered sawmill, Sometime in the early 1860s, the ore supply became exhausted, the furnace shut down. The mill continued to operate till the late 1860s. When it burned down, they didn't rebuild it. After that, there were some changes of ownership. Some oil wells drilled on the property. In 1892, Charles Dickens acquired the property, and in 1895, Thomas Bowman and Company bought the timber on the property. They built a new steam-powered sawmill, which operated till about 1905. In the early 20s, the property was sold to the federal government and became part of the Allegheny National Forest. Hey, we're in the office now, and I turned the heat off because I didn't think I'd be over here for a week or so, and it's actually colder in here, inside here, than it is outside. But I wanted to show you something. Now, when you visit the site of one of these old furnaces, usually you find slag and usually some remains of the furnace, unless all the stone has been robbed out for other uses, and you don't even find that. But rarely do you see remains of all the other activity that went on around it. In this case, we're lucky being on National Forest, it's been preserved. So I made this nifty map here behind me, and we'll take a look at it and give you some idea of the scale of this site and orient you to all the features that we're going to be looking at here. So this site stretches for over a half mile along Little Hickory Creek, which is this stream here, and then the flow goes this way. Now, starting at the downstream end, there's a dam here at the mouth of Furnace Run, and that diverted water into this mill race, which powered the water-powered sawmill. Now, as we go upstream, there's a couple bridge abutments, and then this road that goes up to the top of Church Hill where the farms were located. Over here is Allison and Hatch's steam-powered sawmill. Further up, there's a water course that connects Little Hickory and Furnace Run. Coming off of that is a mill race that goes to what I believe was the Gristmill. Up Furnace Run, there is the site of a large building and a network of trails coming down here. Now, when we get to this area here, this is the area of the furnace. There's these slag piles here, water course between them, the furnace, casting house next to it, and then the charging hill behind it. Following that water course up, site of another building, there's remains of a dam here. Then, across the creek, is a orchard and what I believe was remains of the ironmaster's house. Barn behind that, another building over here. Continuing on upstream is Bowman's sawmill, and we just keep following that up until we come to the site of I have it marked as a stone quarry, but it was an ore mine. And then on the hill overlooking this was another ore mine. And then on the slopes of this valley on both sides are the remains of charcoal kilns. So we'll be looking at all these sites now. Like I said, this is 4-part. 1 and 2, we'll be looking at the mills and the buildings. And 3 will be the kilns and the ore mines, and then 4 we'll be looking at the furnace itself. So we got a lot to cover. Let's get out there. Hey, today we're starting our tour of the Cross Furnace site at the downstream end of the site where Cross's water-powered sawmill is located. And we're standing at across from the mouth of Furnace Run, where it flows into the Little Hickory. And there was a dam here, which was used to back up water for a mill race to power the mill. So let's take a look. Now see on the left, that was the dam and it went across the mouth of Furnace Run, and it backed water up, and you can barely see it over there. There's a mill race which goes down, oh, I don't know, 50 yards or so to the site of the mill. Now this area here where they back water up, this is a little confusing. I'm not sure exactly what was going on here, because there's, on the far side of that, there's another dam, and it's really not making a lot of sense, but maybe we can figure it out. So this is the back side of that dam that parallels Little Hickory. But then over here, paralleling Furnace Run, there's an embankment and with a big cut in it. So like I said, I'm not sure how this worked, but if you look at the two banks, this points right to the mill race. So I'm not sure how they had this set up. And this end of the mill race has been backfilled. Like I said, I'm not sure how this setup worked, but if you look at these two embankments, they just point on either side of that mill race. So somehow they were directing water into there. This is Furnace Run, and there's an embankment along there. The dam on parallels Little Hickory over there, and there was the mill race over that way. That's looking back towards towards the embankments. And then this is the mill race. Now there's been a lot of activity since then, and I don't know, things may have been altered here. This unfortunately was a time period before photography, so to my knowledge there's no photos of this. I don't know even of any drawings. That would certainly clear up a lot of things. Now these mill races had a lining. Sometimes they were wood and sometimes stone, and given the width of this, I would say it was lined with cut stone. But people have, as you'll see later on when we get to the furnace, people have been robbing stone out of here ever since the place was abandoned. So eventually, following this mill race, we come to this very large hole in the ground, and this was the wheel pit. So the mill was located in this area. There's a sort of leveled area over here, and that side, yeah, it looks like it might have been. Now that end of the mill race was backfilled, but it continues further on. So look around, see if we can kind of determine where the mill might have been, but it would have been right here somewhere. So, and remember, this site has been abandoned for 180 years. So other than this mill race in this pit, we probably would not know that anything had been here. Now there's the continuation. That's now called the tail race, and it's really impossible. There's a couple odd stones over there, but it's impossible to tell exactly where the mill was sitting. over here, if you remember, I said they had built a wooden rail tramway to haul mill and furnace products down to the river. And this may have been it. This would be a likely location. And you know, if you look down here, there was some kind of trail or road through here at one time. There's an area on the other side of the wheel pit that looks like it had been leveled off at one time. And if we can find any cut stone, that would be a pretty good indication, but I don't see anything. Now, as we're coming back upstream, we come to this bridge abutment. And there's a road from there that goes up Church Hill to the top of Church Hill, where the farm was located. It's pretty easy to follow. Still very visible after all this time. But I believe this bridge also did double duty. I think it also served as a dam. It raised a little pool behind there because there's a channel above it that connects Little Hickory to Furnace Run. And Furnace Run is a smaller stream and more prone to drought conditions, so I'm sure they had to supplement the water at some time. So if you look at how it's laid out, that would make perfect sense. But right now we're going to go take a closer look at this bridge. So this is a pretty heavy duty bridge, and they may have needed that because there was an ore mine on the hill. And if they were bringing ore wagons down here, they would have been pretty heavy. Well, the road crosses over here and dead ends. The other thing they may have been bringing down, or would have been bringing down on that road, was farm produce. And like I said, that road is very visible. And it got some heavy use, like I said, bringing products from the farm down and bringing ore down off the hill. Well, the furnace is up there hiding in the shadows. Now, if you remember, I said in 1858, David Allison, or Frederick Allison and David Hatch bought the property here, bought the furnace, and they built a new steam-powered sawmill. And this is the site of it here. We've got this area excavated, and then over here are the remains of the boiler house. Now here we had some kind of a trench going over to the to the stream. I've seen similar features around other steam-powered mills. So there's been some kind of drainage system. Looking back at the mill, and I'm not sure how this works out here. There's it was a steam mill, but then we had this trench coming down here. Maybe it was just for drainage, draining the basement of the mill. We've got there's some kind of stone thing here, and then this goes on out to Little Hickory Creek. I'm not quite sure how that went. There may have been another building right in here. It kind of looks like there was. Again, no photos. That would be so helpful. And then over here we had another structure, and to explain that, we got to go back upstream here. Okay, now we're back upstream here. And if you look down there, you can see the bridge. And I said I thought that might have also served as a dam, because we have a channel over here that I believe was man-made that connects Little Hickory with Furnace Run. The Furnace Run was a much smaller stream, and remember, that was the one supplying the original water-powered mill, so they may have had to divert water into there at different times. So that channel comes down here, and there's a mill race over here. Now this end of it has been backfilled, but if we follow this mill race down, you got this stone here. It just doesn't look like that was a natural occurrence. But follow this race down here, and it comes into this excavated area here. Now, what I believe this was a gristmill. It's way too small to have been any kind of a sawmill. And then tail race goes on out, and a lot of it's partially backfilled. And a gristmill was a feature of a lot of iron plantations. There wasn't one available locally, they would build their own. So that's it for part one. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment, and thanks for watching. Think of things like iron manufacturing or starting a rural occupation. I forgot where I was going with this. Not the often. Man, okay. at the downstream end where across his water-powered sawmill was working, located. Yeah.